All right. Good morning. This is Jeff. We're here on the Huddle Review exclusively on the chain. Today, we're going to be getting into this. I don't know if it's hype. I don't know if it's real conversation. Whatever it's going to be, whatever it is, there's a lot of conversation right now about where Bitcoin is going. All this investment coming into Bitcoin. The transition of the CBDC market, the USDC using Stellar, XLM, XRP. All these things are being thrown around. The key here is that there's also a lot of mainstream attention. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We also want to get started. So when we do get started, I think we need to hit this. All right. And we are live. This is awesome. Got people coming into the room, did a little bit of an intro. We're going to be talking a little bit about Bitcoin today, going to $1 million, $100,000. I don't know, where is it going? We got to get into XRP. We got to get into XLM. There's a whole bunch of things that we're going to talk about. Most importantly, though, as we start off, it's always great to recognize people as they're bouncing in. Michael Otto, all the way in from the UK. We got Peter Corbett bouncing in. And if you're not drinking your espresso, make sure you go and get an espresso. Today is Coffee Cult with a K. Coffee with a K, Cult with a K. It's outstanding. Really dark, rich, flavorful. Highly recommend. We've got Jamaican XRP bouncing in here as well. Good to see you on. And Ferdy, what is up, man? All the way in from the Netherlands. So it's great to have you on as well. There's some people that bounced in before, not sure if they're still in here, but people are going to start rolling in here. We have a lot to cover. There's so much to cover and not enough time to cover it in. But there's one thing that I wanted to start with, and I thought this is probably the most interesting out of everything going on, because one thing that everybody seems to talk about, what is up, Chip? Good video, by the way, Chip. Chip dropped a video this morning at 7 a.m. Really good video. Highly recommend. It's on the other channel. So after we're done here, you guys can go to the description below and bounce over there. Also want to remind everybody, if you're brand new and you're somehow finding the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Everybody else bouncing in, make sure you hit that thumbs up and leave some comments. So David D, all the way in from London. Great to have you on as well. Man, this stuff is good. This is a really good one. Ran out of the Death Wish, got the Segfredo, got to reorder the Death Wish, but the Coffee Cult is good. Good stuff. All right. So this is like, I stumbled on this article the other day, and I was thinking about, so many people talk about if it's not your key, it's not your crypto. If you're not holding it, if you don't have it on your ledger, if you're putting it onto an exchange, you're basically, are you self-custodying your digital asset when you're using a ledger? Are there issues with full privacy? So I think that this is an amazing place to start, because as the market's heating up, then we're starting to see, some discussion over regulation. We're starting to see more and more discussion over the direction of where Bitcoin and everything else, and XLM and everything else, because you get the hypesters, like Ferdy, for instance. I mean, when, Ferdy's an XLM maxi. So, but so within this whole idea and discussion over, regulation, now all of a sudden, that this statement comes out, this article comes out over on the Daily Huddle, and the title of their article is "Top Crypto Lawyer Warns Investors and Advocates, Says the Regulatory Battle Over Self-Custody and Privacy is Brewing." So what does that mean exactly? If you're self-custodying, are you meeting all the KYC and the AML policies for your own holding? Are you then able to move it? What kind of things need to happen in order for, is that even part of the conversation? Is that what's factoring in here? It's really, really interesting. So here it says there's some regulation at the on-ramps and off-ramps, but so far not enough to seriously infringe on the freedoms of self-custody and privacy. This is changing. Policymakers' approach to AML regulation is shifting significantly towards harsher restrictions on a global scale. So does that mean that they're going to then limit people's ability to hold these privacy tokens? Are you not able to then self-custody? Is it going to put something like a ledger out of business, or does the concept then change and the ledger just becomes a security mechanism of the exchanges? As you start thinking about it, if you want to be more, hack proof, and you also want to move in a direction where people have shared responsibility over their digital asset space, then it almost, begins to make sense that a Coinbase or an Uphold or one of the other exchanges looks into either partnering with or buying a ledger type product. To me, I think it would make a little bit more sense, if they allow for that extra security layer. Why not have a hardware security layer instead of just a, two-step authentication, fingerprint, retina scan, whatever it might be with your phone? Why not have the ledger that you have to plug in or have it with you Bluetooth in order to access, and have that option? So if you want to move, $5,000 worth of digital asset over to a wallet that you're using with your phone, for instance, for everyday purchases, then so be it. But if you're going to have a bulk of your savings in a digital asset, do you want everything accessible via your phone, regardless of what the scenario might be? Isn't it better to have it more secure? Which is really one of the purposes in a digital age or pre-digital age why people were tapping into and using banks for a security measure to hold all of their money, right? And so there's so many different variables. Then you get into the credit aspect. So there's a lot of these exchanges getting into the idea of a debit card, a credit card. Also makes it easier because if you're using a credit app or card, whether it's card or app at some point, then you're buying on credit and paying later with your digital asset to offset it. There, maybe the two are easily connected together, or it's a debit card number that's constantly rotating, so that, there's not, you're cutting out or you're adding that extra layer of security. But I'm just thinking from a self-custody perspective, what happens? And that's why you really start thinking, what do the governments and the regulators, what are they thinking about when they're getting more and more in depth into this conversation of regulating the digital assets, and really identifying and realizing, coming to the realization that the digital asset space is really here to stay. So David D is saying, no doubt OKEX should serve as an example why you want to choose your exchanges with great caution and in a jurisdiction you can trust. David D is bringing up a great point. Jurisdiction, I think you need to underline that like 100 times, mainly because if you live in the UK, use an exchange that's in the UK, that has offices in the UK. Why? Jurisdiction. It's a lot easier for you to go after a company that's in your home country than it is if you're using, let's say, an exchange with offices over in Singapore, but access to the UK. Imagine bringing an international case right now. Think about the expense, think about the difficulty, the uphill battle. Jurisdiction, I think, is critical, especially if you're going to be keeping a large percentage of your holdings in that exchange. It's like doing, banking with a bank that's outside of the country, but you still have access to it. But you're not a resident of that country. If something happens, what is your, what is your route, of getting a cure to whatever problem might have happened legally or otherwise. If you have to retain an attorney in that country, finding an attorney in your country that understands the laws of that country is going to be extremely difficult. So things to think about with exchanges. So David, I'm glad you brought that up. Jurisdiction. Ferdy is saying banks are still not allowed to do everything in America. So we need more, probably, next month, IMF is going to be a step closer. So yeah, I think from a global perspective, you see a lot of banks, a lot of governments, I should say, a lot of their central banks getting together. We saw that, what was it, 6, 7 banks putting some different points together when it comes to CBDCs, but same thing, same discussion, same idea when it comes to digital assets. So I think that's important. We need to have this normalizing discussion over, how do you treat digital asset? How do you treat a CBDC? So Ferdy, I think that's a great point. And then David brings up here, AML KYC and the travel rule are just the beginning of getting mass adoption. Exactly. Institutional investors aren't coming in until the many regulatory bodies in the US are satisfied. And I think that's an interesting point as well. So we're starting to see big money entering into the space, right? We talked about it, MicroStrategy as a corporate strategy. They put $400 million into Bitcoin. Square just put $50 million into Bitcoin. So as a corporate strategy to, create a significantly sized portfolio of investment to hopefully, prop up, the company and create an amazing base of value, one thing. But financial institutions and others, as they're starting to churn into this idea of coming in, and I think it was Raul Paul, used to be with Goldman Sachs. I think he brought up that he's seen a huge wall of money just waiting on the sidelines to come into the space. So to David D's point, AML KYC travel rule regulation, if the regulatory bodies are uncertain about how to manage, how to handle, then how do we expect the banks and the financial institutions and others to put larger and larger amounts of money into the space? So if you can imagine, at some point having your 401k, your retirement investments, and you can diversify into whatever digital asset, if it's a Bitcoin or XRP, XL, I mean, the list could be long, or it could be a mutual fund, of digital assets, a fund, of some sort of digital assets. But, I think that, these are really important aspects that need to be, tackled. Ferdy, all crypto exchanges are going to be the new banks of the future, 100%. I definitely, agree with that. We're already starting to see the bleed over that exchanges are starting to get into and tapping into the idea of banking, whether it's through issuance of credit cards. Now we're seeing, Ripple, getting ready to, issue credit, whether it's, even if it's to a financial institution, it's still the bank of banks. They're still banking and providing credit for corporations or institutions. So I think that's definitely interesting. Let's see here. Michael Atu. I would like to leave my coin with the Ripple banking if it happens. There's another point. So is Ripple going to get into banking, or are they going to stay primarily into the financial institution space, big banking space? Or is that their primary objective? Or do they begin to diversify their own portfolio, getting into this digital banking space? So to me, in order for there to be mainstream adoption, as we we're just talking about, some of the points that Ferdy brought up and David D brought up, but to that point, in order for there to be full mainstream adoption, a couple of things are going to happen. One, obviously, we need to have some regulation. There has to be some regulatory clarity on how the banks and the exchanges can act and interact, not just domestically, but internationally. I think that's an important aspect of it, even though now we're already starting to see, the positive stepping stones, right? We're moving in the direction where banks are now allowed to custody digital asset. I think that's a big step forward. But then we're seeing, organizations like a Celsius, where you're not just, they're not just essentially custodying, even though they might use a third party to do the cold storage, but they're actually turning the invested digital assets, investing digital asset, gaining interest from their, from their side of it, where they're lending it out, and a sharing of interest. Bank, right? That has bank written all over it, but they don't have the banking license or charters yet. But little by little, we're going to start seeing that happen. So let me see here. Loosely saw Galgatron and Nick B tweets, but not invested enough. Oh, okay. I missed something in the conversation. So, okay. So you like that, Ferdy? You like the tree? Thinking of swapping it out for an orange tree, but undecided, Ferdy. What is up, Crawfish XRP? It's always great. People bounce in here and join us in the morning. And I've got Chip now moving away from the brown water filtered drip coffee over to making espresso. How great is that? Got to get the espresso, got to get the maker going. If you guys want the easy way of doing it, obviously you can go. There was an interesting article. They were comparing different espresso makers. And they had, I think, one from Kmart for like $99 that was beating out espresso makers that were selling for like $4,500 and more. But I use the stovetop, so you get the that typical stovetop old Italian style espresso maker. Works perfectly. It takes almost precisely like 7 minutes. You fill the water up to the little steam outlet, put the water in there, grind your coffee, put that into the little cup, screw it on, put it on the stove, 7 minutes, and you got your espresso. Definitely worthwhile. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about this custody idea. Now, I want to move into another thing that came up recently. Now, everything gets intertwined and tangled up here, because we're going to get into what some of these bigger players in the space are thinking about Bitcoin. What are they thinking about Stellar? What's going on with Stellar with the USDC right now? Why are people thinking XRP as the base for CBDCs? What's going on in this conversation? But before we can even get there was this article that popped up a couple days ago. This was on CoinDesk. Trump's security hawks called distributed ledgers critical in the U.S.-China tech arms race. So essentially, it says here, the Trump administration has included distributed ledger tech, DLT, the granddaddy tech behind cryptocurrency and blockchain, in its strategy for preserving America's technological supremacy over Russia and China. So I thought that this was interesting as a mindset. There wasn't a ton in this article. We could dig more into what's going on over in the Department of Homeland Security, how they're really, getting into the full discussion over this, what exactly is going on as they dig in, as they're researching, what is the significance of this. But it actually did come up, and it's in they have this the guide is called the National Strategy for Critical and Emerging Technologies, and there's a whole long discussion over all these different ideas. But when you start seeing some discussion over whether it's DLT, or you start seeing blockchain, you start seeing what does it mean to maintain technological advantage, so how does that happen? What needs to be accomplished when you start seeing others within the space that might be moving further ahead when it comes to artificial intelligence? What might come to things along those lines. So check this out. So this was I popped this from the article. Let me see if I can here we go. So this is from the National Strategy. And you can see right here, the United States government critical and emerging technology list. So the critical and emergency tech, which is the C&ET list, reflects the 20 tech areas that the United States government, department, and agencies identified to the NSC, the National Security Council staff, as priorities for their missions. So there's a few things on here I think critical. Well, one, artificial intelligence. Two, distributed ledger technologies. They don't really get into the blockchain, but let them have their point here. Quantum information science. There's space tech, energy tech. So we're starting to see, there's definitely some critical areas, autonomous systems. So this is all mixed in. These are their top 20 that they're seeing as like vital, critical areas, that they really need to hone in on, that they need to focus in on. And it's good to see. It's good to see. It's not, that doesn't mean any, if you want to be, a hypester, if I was looking at this article, I'd be like, oh my God, the US government's talking about DLT. They're about to absorb it into, and they're going to roll out the digital dollar that's built on the XRP ledger and all. You can't read into it too much. However, it's an important step forward to see exactly the mindset, because we're all falling back and saying, what is the government doing when they're seeing this amazing technology pop up, but they're not doing anything about it, So you see that? Ferdy said it. He said that right there. Trump wants XLM. XLM. Stellar is becoming number one in the space, Ferdy. You know why? Because it's backed by IBM. But seriously, Ferdy, with your the XLM maximalists. It's very rare that we have XLM maximalists in the conversation, but every time Ferdy comes in, you get to learn something new. So don't forget to mention executive orders. Good point. So a lot of things that are definitely happening, moving, developing, as we start seeing some of their strategies. So highlighting that again, what are the things that can be accomplished? Are they becoming more bullish in the space? Or are they becoming more observant and understanding that certain things are happening? We know what's going on in the big C, across the pond over there, way over there. If you go west, if you head west, go over the ocean from California, and if you keep going a little bit, you'll get to the big C. But over there, we know what's going on. We see what they're doing in the digital asset space. We know they're creating a centralized digital economy, centralized digital currency. Not really much to do with the blockchain. They're testing it out. Now they're getting ready to roll it out to millions. They had some really interesting test cases. I thought it was interesting that a couple months ago they were saying how a few McDonald's and Starbucks locations were going to be part of it, and now they're trying to retract and saying they're not, obviously for obvious reasons. But I thought that was interesting. So David, I was being a little sarcastic when you were saying hype. Okay, that's okay. No, I know, I get it. Chip, come on, what is up with you and these short-lived executive orders? Okay, so all right, let's move on here. So here's another one. So as we move in, I'm going to save this one for over here when we get into Bitcoin, DeFi. Where's this? This is something. I also find it interesting. You get into. I don't know if I want to pop this up. What is this? There's all this crap and NATO notifications, Bloomberg, blah, blah, blah. I wish I could just hide all this stuff. This was on Bloomberg. Let me share this if I can get it without them popping up a million ads, which not going to happen. So not going to open this one. But so this was on Bloomberg. This article heading was from, let's say the 13th. So earlier in the week, I think it was that Tuesday. So it was in the technology section of Bloomberg. Every time I see an article on Bloomberg or on Forbes or on, Yahoo Finance, I always dig to say, okay, are they going back to like Cointelegraph or CoinDesk? Yahoo Finance taps in a lot, but within Bloomberg, they seem to have their own writers talking about this space. But here it's interesting because they we think that there's YouTubers out there that peddle and hype and FOMO. Bloomberg and Forbes and all these guys, this seems to be like their, that's their moniker. That's what they do. They seem to peddle in it a lot. But here you have DeFi replaces blockchain as they must have crypto moniker. There's a lot of conversation about DeFi is it truly replacing, blockchain? Does everyone now have to have DeFi? I think, they actually have a point here that blockchain is seeming to become a little bit like old tech. It's like talking about, a PC and needing a PC in the days of the internet boom and everything's .com, and you're like, yeah, but I have a PC, and everyone's like, oh no, but it's all about the .com, and so it's happened fast. Is DeFi actually needed in your company name now? Do you have to have DeFi in there and not blockchain because DeFi is gaining more momentum? Or, as that happens, now we know that, you can have, the bubbles that pop up. Is DeFi creating kind of a bubble that doesn't have an end? I wish I meant to save this video. I think Chip had shared it, or someone shared it. Someone was drawing out on a napkin explaining what DeFi was, and it was all, nicely drawn. And he said that you got this over here and this, and here's the system. And he's trying to explain the DeFi, and he starts, putting lines all over the place. And he said basically just scribbling all over it, because that's, so many people don't really understand the idea behind the DeFi. Is it really understandable in its decentralized, framework? It's crazy, but DeFi is hitting hard or large, and it's interesting too because you're starting to see, big booms and big crashes, very dangerous, and it could really, burn itself out fast. And I think it's interesting here. So you have right up the first thing in this article. It says, remember when Long Island Iced Tea sent its shares soaring by reinventing itself as a crypto company and then crashed and burned? Is that happening in the DeFi space? I mean, we saw the YFI boom to like 39, 40, 43,000 in like 2 days. And then it crashed all the way over the ledge, all the way back down to like 13,000. Who is left holding that bag? I mean, that's crazy, absolutely crazy, so let me see. Here we go. There's also about DApps, post-blockchain platform for DApps as Holochain. A lot of stuff going on the DApps. Interesting. Interesting point. Now it looks like Chip has become an XLM maxi. Let's see. Ferdy, Forbes has paid writers. That's right. It's all clickbait. That's what it is. Paid writers. Has paid writers. I would hope so. Maybe rephrase that comment a little bit. I know what you mean, but I think most writers of most magazines and newspapers are paid. But I get what your idea. I think they're freelance writers. I don't believe they're employed, and they get freelance that are 100% based on how many clicks they get and how much hype they promote. But they're not paid salary. They're paid based on clicks. So, yeah. David D. Bloomberg and Forbes aren't that great reliable sources they used to be. That's true too. Yeah, it's just about word candy. That's about all it is. So, all right. Clickbait. See, there you go. Clickbait. Bait. There you go. All right, let's move on. A lot of things to look at here. I thought this was interesting. I just wanted to read the title. Sometimes, in this age of social media, especially in like the Twitter age, people just want to read, X number of characters. They don't even want to go in and dig into the article. So something shows up on Twitter and it's like a headline, and it's a FOMO clickbaity headline, and then people make up their entire mind based on that, even though there might be a link to an article. Like, I don't have time to read the article. But here on CoinDesk, there was a title here: Australian Central Bank sees no strong public policy case for a CBDC. The Australian Central Bank sees no need to issue its own retail digital currency just yet. So meaning their own central bank digital currency. There's other things potentially happening behind the scenes over there. Do they need a digital version of the Australian dollar? They don't think so. They don't think that it's necessary at this point. Hey, you know what? That's their idea. So it says here, though, according to Richards, the RBA looked at a number of factors that could shape a potential CBDC, including the role of the central bank and underscore private entities. whether it would be account-based or token-based, whether it be used offline, the degree of anonymity might be allowed, and even whether an Australian CBDC would be based on blockchain or distributed ledger. Look at that comment. That to me is what every single government should be talking about. That's the discussion point. So are they saying, hey, they're not ready yet? They don't see a public policy case yet. However, look at what they're talking about. They're analyzing, how are they going to shape it? What are the factors that would design and develop a CBDC versus when they were trying to throw out that CARE Act, they're trying to get money to the people in the US. All of a sudden, Maxine Waters throws out, we need a digital dollar and we're just going to put it together. No thought, no discussion, no ideas. They just want to get something into people's hands. They're not really thinking through the initiative. It's amazing me. The more I dig into Australia, and Australia seems it's like it's a micro. Obviously, it's its own country, but we look at Australia and you think about what? Foster's Beer and koala bears, right? And Crocodile Dundee, if you want to go back to the 80s, and watch movies like that. That's what people, I don't know, all people. And then you have the Opera House, on the in Sydney, right? And so I think it's interesting that that here's Australia. Australia is like a microcosm of the United States with a little sprinkling of Europe in it. That it amazes me because I can remember, go back a couple years, a buddy of mine, his dad was a huge designer at General Motors, and he designed a lot of the back in the heydays he worked on the Chevy, he worked on Cadillac, he worked on Camaro. I think he did some design for Corvette. There are a lot of things that he had worked on that you may have seen on the road in past years. But I thought it was interesting. So, and this goes back a number of years, but I met someone that was in charge of what was going on over in Australia, and they're actually building platforms and designing platforms over in Australia. And there were certain vehicles over in Australia that we didn't have anywhere else. And I thought that was interesting. And it seems like even in this scenario, if we look at it from a financial perspective, look at what Australia is doing in the adoption of this space, right? You see a lot more development within the cross-border platforms using XRP technology. Here we have, limited there. It seems like there's more development. Even if you go and watch the Shark Tank Australia, it amazes me, what's going on over there. Again, obviously it's its own country, but when you see the conversation that goes on over there, in some way, I feel like they're further ahead than we are over here in the US. Again, it's kind of a sprinkling. It's the US ideas with a sprinkling of Europe mixed into it. But to that point, it's really amazing, where they're going, what they're thinking. But let me read this last statement, then we'll move on. Again, let me read this again. That the RBA has looked at a number of factors that could help shape a potential CBDC, including the role of the central bank and private entities. And to me, that statement is everything, right? So they're seeing central bank, private entities working together. They're not seeing a centralized mechanism that's going to try to roll out a digital asset on its own to be fully centralized. And here they're admitting, look, we understand government doesn't do everything. So we know that central bank and private entities should probably work together. That's why we're looking into that. Whether it should be account-based or token-based. How is that going to work? How are you going to use it offline? Can it only be used online, phones, etc.? What kind of anonymity should be allowed? Should there be anonymity allowed when you're using the digital asset? That's interesting. Right? And are they going to base it on a blockchain or distributed ledger? Again, I think every government should be thinking that way. And I don't know. I mean, maybe some are. We're not seeing it. We're definitely not seeing it. So let's see here. I think about Aussie bands, Men at Work, Midnight Oil, In Excess, Tame Impala, The Church, The Vines. Yeah, there you go. There's a lot of that. It's amazing, right? Here you go, Ferdy. I don't know. Okay, skip it. Here we go. Only AC/DC. Thanks, Matt. That's interesting. Interesting comment about the big C and Australia. Definitely could be. Definitely could be a point there. But are they trying to garner some of that regional influence with their centralized renminbi? That's not. Who knows where it's going to go. All right, so let's see here. This one's not so interesting. I thought it was interesting, not so interesting to the conversation. All right, now we're going to get into where we are here. Let's see. Okay, now I thought this was interesting. I got to share this. This came up as a conversation on Twitter, and I just want to highlight a few of these that popped up on Twitter. This was from Dictator Know-It-All. Came up with an idea. He said, "Here's an idea for Ripple, Garlinghouse, etc. Why don't you create a subsidiary company in the UK and put RippleNet and ODL under the ownership of the new subsidiary, which will have a CEO, and then you'll have your regulatory clarity you want. Banks do this all the time." Thinking from a banking perspective. Interesting. And then so you have what does that have to highlight? Mickey B. Fresh over here. Might surprise you that RippleNet was registered in the UK a couple years back. RippleNet is governed by a committee, not by Ripple. Ripple just provides the software and products. Your suggestion changes nothing. Boom, look at that. Right back at them. I love this conversation. Governance and ownership are completely two different things. Ripple owns the software. Then we get name your CEO. And I just thought that was interesting. Interesting dialogue going back and forth there. So, all right, let's go over to here to back to Bitcoin. I want to get into XRP. We see kind of the direction things are going in there. But I want to get in a little bit into Bitcoin, and then we're gonna end off our conversation on XRP. But there are a few interesting things that came up. One of these was on Bitcoin.com. This came up. Actually, I saw this happen before, but I think it's another Bitcoin block from 2010, 10 years ago, is being transferred again. Let me see if I can pop this one up. I thought, it's just interesting. You start seeing this movement. What does it actually mean? What exactly is going on? But here you go. Another sleeping Bitcoin block reward from 10 was caught up, waking up after 10 years. How many? 50 Bitcoins created November 11, 2010, transferred after 10 years. So it's just been sitting there, stagnant from the Satoshi era. I think this is really cool. As we're you're starting to get into it. Yes, we're 10 years into it, but you're starting to see the historic terminology starting to kick in, right? Satoshi era. How great is that? To think about that period in time when these were mined as the Satoshi era. I like the terminology they're coming up with to put this together. It's estimated that there are anywhere between 1.5 to 1.8 million Bitcoin that are considered sleeping Bitcoins from the Satoshi era. Total value right now of $20 billion. A great number of these have been moving randomly, and some of them in waves. What does that mean? They've been sitting stagnant for 10 years, and now all of a sudden they're moving around. Who's moving them? Who do they belong to? Where are they moving to? What exactly is happening? Why is it happening? It's just interesting, timing to see this type of thing happen, going on. So, like David D, I'd highly recommend that you look into your sofa cushions. If you've had your sofa around long enough to when you started mining Bitcoin, you might want to look in your sofa cushions and see if you have any BTC in there. So let's see, what is this here? There you go, Chip. That happens all the time. Different countries. What is up, XRP Carolina? Good to see you on. Matt Morrow. I was in real estate. Know the market well. The Chinese left years ago. So interesting. Yeah, I think we've seen cycles as groups have moved in and out, within the economy, especially in the retail space. So here we go. Here's another one. This is the big one. This is where we're starting to see this conversation. We saw Raoul Powell, talked about this, and do you take his word at face value? How do you handle, you see these people coming out, is there motivation? Is there discussion? Are they just trying to be relevant, in the conversation in this space? But here you go. Bitcoin will surge to $1 million in 5 years by an enormous wall of money. And this is what Raoul Paul was saying. The price of Bitcoin could hit 1 million. So he's not saying it is, he's saying it could, just based on what he's seen. And he's starting to you're seeing the beginnings of this large wall of money, which is what he's saying. And we are seeing that. We're starting to see, like I said, MicroStrategy, they put 400 million in. Square, 50 million. We're going to see that trend pick up. The question is it all going into Bitcoin? Is it going to be diversified? Is Bitcoin the one and only place? But Raoul Paul has now allocated more than 50% of his capital into Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean that's he's doubling down on it. He sees it happening. He's saying, "Hey, I gotta go this direction." Even if it goes to 20, he's doubled his money. Is it going to million? Maybe, maybe not. Is it going back to 20? There's probably a good chance that it would, but there's a chance that it won't. So he could be on either side of it, but he's definitely putting himself into that position of seeing what could potentially happen. Interesting. And then here we have here. I thought that this was a really interesting statement. Again, in the space, you can take it, whether it's just related to Bitcoin or otherwise. I'm going to pull this up. I thought it was worth sharing. This is from Tyler Winklevoss. This goes back. Jeff Bezos recalling raising money for Amazon. It took more than 50 meetings for me to raise 1 million from investors. And over the course of all those meetings, the most common question was, what's the internet? Think about that, right? And now Tyler's saying it sums up his early experience telling people about Bitcoin. Interesting. So I like some of these comments. So unfortunately for Bitcoin, it serves absolutely no purpose and generates no value, zero. CZ, kind of like current experience still. So he responded, we're still early, interesting comments. So, but, I think that statement is really meaningful. We're still early, it really, you start to think it's not just about Bitcoin, it's about the whole digital asset space. That's his experience because that's what he's focused on. There's definitely, a lot happening. So let's wrap up with XRP. So let's see here. Minuchin said we won't even be talking about Bitcoin. What is up, SubGod123? Good to see you here. Domain name, bank exchange, crypto.com. Oh, you know what? There's something. I meant to put it up here. Atari is getting ready to drop Atari tokens, October 29th. Bitcoin.com somehow partnered with Atari to roll out their new token. If it's available in the US, I'm planning on getting some. It's amazing what Atari's vision is to become the token for gaming. If anybody has an opportunity to do it, you put the Atari name behind it. Maybe there'll be some, just some passion, name recognition. People that are in the space, I used to have an Atari. I got to get some Atari token. Can it be then incorporated? Time will tell, but something definitely to look into. I didn't pull that up. I thought that was interesting. But here's kind of to wrap up. This came up in the Daily Huddle on the 15th. The headline here is Ripple chief says payments firm is doubling down on XRP after crypto assets hit $2 billion cross-border milestone. And it's interesting because, I'm going to be putting together a video that is basically talking about, moving from the adoption stage to the growth stage. So we've seen kind of different stages in digital assets. We've had the identification stage, trying to convince everybody that blockchain and digital assets are real. So you get that identification stage. Then we entered it. That was like in 2017. We're not really in the adoption phase yet, but that was kind of the beginning. But it was more still the identification phase in 2017. There was obviously a lot happening before that. But you started seeing mainstream identification. You started seeing the FOMO hit. You started seeing the big market increase. You started to see, that identifier that it is something, that digital assets and the blockchain tech are, altcoins, whatever, you want to look at it as, cryptocurrency is here to stay and can have a major impact on everything that we're working on. So that was kind of like a turning point. Then we went over the past couple of years into adoption phase, especially for Ripple. Now, they're looking at, this growth phase, because now they're moving into another direction. And we're going to make a video just on that, going over an article that they put out and discuss it a little bit more into detail. But I think that this part is important because, what this article is bringing out, which is, again, getting into growth, getting into expansion. Why is Ripple, doubling down on XRP? What is going on, with this cross-border milestone? We're starting to see, some, what is this? What? All right. So we have here, okay, a Ripple CEO, Brad Garland, now says 1/5 of all transactions on its global payments network, RippleNet, are now performed using the crypto asset XRP. That's big. That's really big that they brought that up. So that's 1/5. They're moving in a direction. They're definitely moving. And so that identifier, as they're growing into the space, Chip and I the other night were talking about a platform that it took them, what was it, Cambridge or one of the others? It took them 2 years. They tested out. They were doing their testing 2 years ago, and now 2 years later they're incorporating RippleNet, most likely incorporating XRP and ODL. But 1/5 of all global payments right now are using XRP. That's only 1/5 of what they're doing. They're seeing the success in this space. I like how Garland now says that XRP and ODL are crucial to Ripple's global expansion and its long-term success. And we've said that so many times, discussing this on this show, that XRP and ODL are critical to the expansion and survival. That's the game changer. That without the XRP, without the ODL, RippleNet is just a messaging platform that's a little bit better than Swift, but really not doing much more. And then they would have to seek out other mechanisms. But their ODL, everything is, in my opinion, is hinging on the ODL, the on-demand liquidity, their credit, on-demand liquidity, right? Being able to help financial institutions or help banks get rid of Nostro Vostro accounts, on-demand liquidity, credit. Movement immediately within that 4-second transfer window, ODL. Being able to leverage the relationship with the exchanges, ODL. I mean, everything falls back on that. XRP is the seamless transition point. XRP is what's actually going to, allow everything to happen. Just got to check here. So far, so good. Tennis courts are dry. So awesome. All right. So that's kind of where things are going. XLM, I meant to talk about XLM because there's a lot going on. And, is it hype? We see a lot of conversation with XRP being the base of the CBDCs. I think the XRP and RippleNet is in a unique position with the XRP ledger above pretty much any other solution out there right now, because they've already been working and testing in this space since 2012. 8 years of testing and working with banks and financial institutions. Why would a government that's developing a CBDC go anywhere else? It doesn't make sense. If they want to put it on blockchain, if they want to use the technology, why would they go anywhere else? Doesn't make sense. And then you have to focus in on XLM, because XLM or Stellar partnership with IBM, same thing. They're moving in that direction. IBM is a trusted name in the space. IBM is large in the banking space and in the world in terms of what they do. So are they then, through IBM and the Stellar, can XLM factor into it? I don't know, but are they getting ready to put the USDC somehow integrated within the Stellar? There's a lot going on. Peter Corbett says, I think I have to correct you, Jeff. He said 20% of the global payments on RippleNet are using XRP, not 20%. Right. No, not 20% of all global payments, 20% of the global payments on RippleNet. I 100% agree. If I misquoted or said something, but yeah, no, it's of Ripple global payments. Everything was in the context of RippleNet. Definitely not global payments. Let's go back, rewind it, and delete that if I said that. Global payments through RippleNet. That's it. Yeah, that's what I meant. So obviously, not 20% of global payments. So thanks for bringing that out there. Let's see, Matt, your thoughts on the IMF SDRs? If they move in that direction, again, they can't do it alone. They have to tap into whether it's a Stellar or an XRP ledger. They have to use existing technology to build on. They can't do it with trying to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I think if they're going to tap into anything, tap into Stellar, tap into the XRP ledger, and build from there. We've seen, I can't remember what country it was. Chip had talked about it, where they're actually designing their CBDC based on, it might have been Romania or somewhere. Their digital token was going to be based on XLM or based on Stellar. And just because they use the Stellar platform, doesn't necessarily refer to the fact that they're going to be using XLM. Maybe they incorporate it, maybe they don't. It's the technology behind it, just like with IBM. Is IBM really using XLM, or are they using the technology? Can they then incorporate it all together? So yeah. So I think that's important. I think that, again, as we look at it, we have to understand, the dimension of what's going on, with everything. Think XRP is getting used for the dummy run while XLM goes to the moon. Who knows? Maybe that'll happen. The way I look at it as well, and maybe completely off base, but as they start, breaking it down, XRP, my opinion only, was designed, developed for financial institutions, large movement of money. Everything that Ripple is using it for right now, that's its purpose. XLM on the other side with Stellar was all about getting the unbanked banked, was all about the retail consumer, was all about focused on money, and kind of replacing the fiat to make things flow better. That was their objective, getting money into the hands of people that can't bank and creating an easy, seamless transition of money. So that's where, the XLM, and that's where they're kind of moving in that direction. So is Stellar better positioned? I don't know. We'd have to get into the nitty gritties of the technology. Is Stellar then a better technology for the retail, for the money, versus XRP or the XRP ledger? So yeah, pretty exactly, Cambridge. So but Chip, keep in mind, the IMF is a store of value. They are a charity organization supported globally by other countries. The US is a huge donor, right? That's where, from that perspective, does the IMF have an impact? That we can get into that conversation. But anyhow, you guys have been awesome. We're on 53 minutes. I'd love to continue this conversation. If you guys like what we're talking about, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. I'm seeing so many new names in the space, which is awesome. And of course, as we get into talking about the XDR and the ESDR, none other than Digital Nomad Investor pops in here right at the nick of time. Awesome comment here. Is XRP is wholesale banking, XLM is retail. Boom, exactly. Different markets, not competing markets. I like that point. That's my opinion as well. But you guys are awesome. So anyhow, we can pick this up. We're going to have our roundtable conversation with Mark Phillips, tomorrow evening, Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you look out for the tweets as that comes out. Get back in here tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love to see you all here. It's going to be an amazing conversation with Mark tomorrow. And then next week, we have Sean Thompson joining us on the roundtable, which is always 8 p.m. on Sunday evenings, Eastern Standard Time. And we're always here with the HODL review Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. You guys have been absolutely outstanding. Go down below, check out our other channel. There's links to it down there someplace. And we'll see you tomorrow night. You guys are fantastic. Have an amazing rest of your weekend. I'm out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.